Anime has transcended from a niche interest shared by basement-dwelling weirdos into a worldwide phenomenon, with its reach expanded to other forms. From live-action TV shows of popular shows that completely butcher the original, to fans cosplaying as their favourite character whilst having the self-confidence to show a lot of skin in public, and people just deciding to strip the human flesh entirely to don on a virtual avatar for the sake of entertainment. And arguably, the most popular media anime has expanded into would be video games. Naruto, Attack on Titan, Dragon Ball Z, and other successful media have at some point made a break into the video game industry, allowing the fans of the shows to enjoy the story again, interact with some of their favourite characters, and just overall explore the world of the show at their own pace. Where it gets interesting though is when the opposite happens, video games with an anime-like inspiration or aesthetic getting their own show. You have JRPG games such as the Persona series, which, in the case of Persona 5, released a manga and anime after the game was initially released, and allowing the fans of the series to enjoy the game's story in a book or show format. Well, as much as you can enjoy the god-awful adaptation of Persona 5 the animation. Go check out my video on that, by the way. You also have gacha games such as Azure Lane or Honkai Impact III. Instead of spending thousands of pounds on chibi-sized girls with too much skin and jiggling, they can spend a lot less money on normal-sized girls with too much skin and jiggling, all the while building a decently good story with the case of Azure Lane, or creating a chilled out slice of life cooking show in the case of Honkai Impact. Then you have visual novels, the main topic of this video. Higurashi, Umineko, and Nekopara all started out as video games that trick you into reading text on the screen instead of actually doing something, all the while using simple backgrounds, character sprites, and the occasional computer graphics, or CG. This simple format, when translated into an anime, allows a more streamlined story whilst reaching its full potential in world building, character interaction, and stuff like that. I mention all of this because without some sort of anime or even other form of media like a manga series, games, especially visual novels, have a difficult time of getting traction without some sort of hype or backing behind it. And that's even if they get noticed in the first place, under the mountain of shoddy VNs that get made either as a baby first renpai project or some motherfucker out there who's really horny and wanted to share his horniness with a small group of like-minded people. And that's why I want to talk about a certain visual novel. Not because of the horniness thing I just mentioned, but because there's one visual novel out there which, despite not having a anime adaptation or even a manga, still helped me get into both anime and manga. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Crimson Grey. And from here on out, I just want to say, spoiler alert for Crimson Grey, like the whole series. Go play the game, it's really cheap on Steam, I'll get to it later on, but go play the game. Crimson Grey is set in an unnamed American town in the 1990s, though the Japanese style school uniform says otherwise. There's nothing special about this town, from the locations to the people, except with one obvious difference. A pharmaceutical company named Koitek has essentially a monopoly within the town. With pharmaceuticals all under Koitek's control, students being able to get a job in Koitek after graduating, and even a Koitek approved therapist called Miss Smith on school grounds to help students with any issues, one student being John Nichols, one of our main characters. John is a high-functioning, depressed teenager. I mean, that doesn't really mean anything anymore, but trust me on this. With no parental figure in his life, he spends each day in a repeating cycle of dragging his feet to school, listening to the drivel spattered out by the teacher in the lesson, hanging out with friends, and going to Miss Smith for a therapy session before going home and repeating the cycle over and over again. The cycle is broken one day when John meets Lizzie Doss, our second main character, and finds out she is more mentally broken than John, and is the perfect archetype of a yandere, one who is madly in love with John and would kill anyone to keep him safe. Emphasis on anyone. Crimson Grey is a psychological thriller exploring the psyche of John and Lizzie through John's perspective and the strange circumstances that brought them together. Then we get to a sequel, Crimson Grey Dusk and Dawn. 5 years after the event of Crimson Grey, John and Lizzie are now sophomores in college. Now in the perspective of Lizzie, we see the now couple enjoying most of their college life whilst living with their own mental issues. John has become more diligent to his studies and their future, while Lizzie is doing her best to not earn a 25 kill streaks against her fellow students who are trying to take John away and not call a tactical nuke on the rest of Koitek, who are responsible for both of their condition. And before we continue in the review, I just want to say, if you enjoyed the rest of the video, leave a like, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos, and if you've got a manga, anime, or I guess visual novel, leave it in the comments down below. I'm down to review anything really. So I usually focus on the characters of a series first, then go into the broader subject of world building, but I've decided to start with the world building first because it will help you appreciate John and Lizzie more as characters. First is how the visual novel sets the time of the story through describing the tech used in the world. They mention Lizzie owning a VCR in a house and how the school doesn't have enough funding to have computers in the school, forcing John to collect information about Koitek either at the library or by going to Miss Smith or pharmacist to learn more about the drugs made by Koitek. It's quite a small detail in the game, but it just shows how Sierra Lee, the creator of Crimson Grey, was able to immediately provide the year in which the game was set in without having to explicitly mention it to the player, but instead drop small details that can be glossed over if you're not paying attention. And through John's investigation on Koitek, we get to learn more about the company. At the start, Koitek seemed to be a good company with its development of pharmaceutical drugs and providing Miss Smith to the school. But as you play more and go down different routes, Koitek's dark history begins to surface. You learn about how Koitek rushes through its clinical trials to get their drugs into the market as early as possible, especially Paxotine, an antidepressant that John currently takes. From that small detail, John, and in turn you, the player, start to explore the rabbit hole of Koitek, like how they rebranded from PharmaVax to Koitek, and how the rebrand happened because of some bad drugs and because they were unknowingly testing on pregnant ladies, and how one of those pregnant ladies was actually Lizzie's mother, who gave birth to Lizzie and was exposed to the drugs in the womb, making her being born with a couple of screws loose. The way Koitek's dark past was introduced didn't happen all at once. It was a slow burn that John and the player learns about the more they spend time with Lizzie, talk with Miss Smith and the pharmacist, or just doing research at the library. And Koitek is still a threat in the sequel, even after having some of their men and Miss Smith killed by Lizzie. In self-defense, I'll admit. Koitek are still around and are trying their best to push out more harmful drugs that are being blocked by Congress, only for Congress to retract their decision because another girl, possibly a Koitek victim like Lizzie, goes on a rampage at school and kills a couple of people, which Koitek used as a reason why they need to keep making more drugs without any red tapes. There isn't an obvious leader to Koitek that you get to see in the story. Whoever they are, they just stay in the background, and Koitek just gets mentioned every once in a while either by John, Lizzie, or other students either at the old school or in the college. Again, building on like that slow burn I talked about of Koitek being introduced, they keep it like that throughout the whole story. Koitek just not like, they don't make Koitek the front and center villain of the whole series. It's more focused on the mental state of John and Lizzie, which is such a brilliant way of doing it, because instead of focusing on like an actual villain, it's more on the psyche of the two characters. We get to see how they respond and like kind of decide whether or not the response was a good thing or a bad thing. All we know about Koitek is that they're responsible for how John and Lizzie are, and you know, we obviously know they're bad, but we don't see them really come into action at all. Again, they stay in the background, they affect our characters and other characters, and I guess the world, like the world building in general, by just pulling strings. They don't really come out and say something. No one's the face of Koitek. They just sit in the background, and we get to focus more on the mental issues of John and Lizzie rather than focus on Koitek just being bad in general. Then we get to the CGs used and other fun game elements, mainly in Dusk and Dawn. First, let's focus on the CG, and I'm going to put an image and I'll give you a few seconds for you to notice anything interesting, I guess. Aside from the FPS counter in the corner, I'm going to say I was a bit lazy with that one, my bad. You might have noticed the picture of Lizzie and John under the tree, similar to the one on the main menu of Dusk and Dawn. But what about the knife in front of the picture? And the one on the table? And the one in the kitchen on the table? And the ones hanging in the kitchen? And the fucking knife that was buried in the apples, what about that? You noticed that one as well? Because I didn't. Remember that in Dusk and Dawn, you're viewing the world through the Yandela eyes of Lizzie Doss, not the depressed John Nichols, who stated how she really enjoys knives more than a CS gambling addict. Moreover, Lizzie just murdered a bunch of Koitek enforcers a few years ago and is probably high on their kill list. So having a knife or two or three in arm's reach when she's at home will make it a lot easier for her to defend not herself, but John, which is her main goal. Then within the game, Lizzie will sometimes have the choice to kill people, though you can say no if you're able to, or you can sometimes see Lizzie's internal thoughts throughout some choices. Let me show you, it'd be easier rather than explaining it. They're just small details, but again, it just adds to the story without having to shove information to your face and go and pay attention to small detail that you wouldn't normally see unless you look really fucking hard for it. Honestly, I think this is how I started to get more into anime and into manga. There's a bunch of anime and manga where for some fucking reason all action will come to a screeching fucking halt just so that one character can explain the backstory of someone who is going to die in about 48 frames. This subtle storytelling and attention to detail Sierra Lee does was executed perfectly in my opinion, and just made me enjoy the style more when it comes to video games, anime and manga. The first thing that comes to mind when I was writing the script was Oyasumi Punpun. It's been a minute since I read Punpun, I'll be honest with you, but as I was playing this, again, it reminded me of it. Punpun is drawn as a bird, duck, badminton shuttle, I don't fucking know, but his design is quite literally non-human and it changes to reflect his state of mind throughout the manga. Moreover, he doesn't talk until chapter 105, so basically before chapter 105 we just have to connect the dots with what he says from the response of the other characters around him. Again, it's such a unique way of storytelling that, like Punpun, Crimson Graded, not directly telling the plot but rather drip feeding information as the player follows John and Lizzie. Now let's talk about the main characters. First up, John Nichols. Being born into a family with a workaholic father who didn't realize he was kidnapped at some point and no mother figure in his life, John became depressed and is very self-deprecating when around Lizzie or his friends, which affect his view on life. Quite literally. Most of Crimson Grey will have this grey filter to the background to display how John sees life, even saying that everything is so grey during one of his therapy sessions. Though there are two times when there are some sort of colour to his vision. First is when John takes his old medicine over Paxotine, and the second is at the end where he and Lizzie escapes the Koitek facility. He even says that Lizzie was a single spot of colour to his world during an earlier therapy session. Moreover, his friends and other people John interacts with will have no sprite or even names in the dialogue box. The only exception is one, Lizzie, unsurprisingly, and the second one is Miss Smith, the therapist who has been conditioning John throughout the therapy sessions. These two small details shows how bad John's depression has gotten without again having to overly emphasize his depression at every moment of the story. Just these small details, which when paired with the slow burn storytelling, creates a fantastic way of character development without making it the main focal point of a scene. Then you get some of John's bizarre antics. One small one is him leaving a note for Lizzie when she breaks into his locker, as well as laughing at another of Lizzie's notes when she says that she doesn't feel like murdering anyone today. However, there are two big instances of John's bizarre antics. The first one is when John, or you the player, is able to break out of Lizzie's basement. However, you can change John's mind and stay until Lizzie comes back to see a free John sitting in the basement waiting for Lizzie, as like a weird way of like declaring his love for her. And another time is when John quite literally helps Lizzie escape after killing someone, and as well as the true ending where they become romantically involved after Lizzie just killed a bunch of Koitek employees right in front of John's eyes. He can also take Paxotine while he's in the basement, causing him to be in a more sedated state of mind where Lizzie will start to take care of him and love him even more, although this loving and caring will stop at some point in the future when she realizes that John is basically not John anymore. In Dusk and Dawn, John is seemed to be able to live with his depression now that he's not on Paxotine anymore. Yes, he's still depressed, but he's developed dark humor as a coping mechanism and overall seems to be better, with a few depressing spells here and there, but nothing too major. He also plans to marry Lizzie at the end, so he's definitely kept that bizarreness that he had from the first game. John's character, while it's not being special like at all, was still well written. The way he sees the world with it being shades of grey, the small detail of him not acknowledging other characters until he's in college and not taking Paxotine, to the bizarreness of him just being in love with a mentally unstable yandere, and even joking about the way she kills people when they escape the facility and are now in college. These small details just give him a boost in his character, and overall John is normal and relatable. Well, I mean, like his depression is relatable, not the whole yandere girlfriend and escaping a rogue pharmaceutical company testing facility. but apart from that, he's actually normal. He doesn't have any like superhero characteristics in him, and he's not a charismatic person. He doesn't attract the attention of everyone around him, for better or worse. He's just a guy who suffers from extreme depression and just took really shit antidepressants that were rushed into production by a pharmaceutical company that didn't care about the customers or like the medicine they were making. They cared more about the profit. It was just in a bad place at a bad time, but at the end of it, he came out better. Moving from one mentally deficient person to another mentally deficient person, Lizzie Doss came from a similar family background as John, but instead her father James left them, and her mother Abby, as I mentioned before, was an addict who undergone a coitic trial while she was pregnant with Lizzie, who was affected by the drugs of the trial in the womb and came out psycho, given her inhuman speed and reflexes. Lizzie can be classified as an isolating type of yandere, one who, by any means, makes it so that they're the only person their victim will be around and depend on. Wait, there's fucking classifications to yanderes. This is seen basically through both games, Crimson Grey and Dusk and Dawn. Lizzie will kidnap John to protect him from other people. She will pull out a knife when they met on the school's rooftop, saying that John needs help, and is very distrustful against Miss Smith and other female classmates, thinking that they're trying to take John away. As well as this one gay guy called Aaron in Dusk and Dawn, but yeah, he's like the only exception to the whole I'm gonna kill female rules. She will also kill people who she deems a threat to her and John, again be it classmates, Miss Smith and other coitic workers. Not only that, but her behaviour will drastically change when John is either bullied or insulted. Her character sprite will literally have dimmer eyes, and she becomes more erratic, both in her writing notes to John and also burning down a sakura tree of love because John thought the tree was stupid and didn't actually bring true love to those who confessed under it. In fact, she will even change herself, taking medicine John gives her if it means that John will love her, which is kinda fucked up if you think about it for a minute. Even though Liz is a yandere, she can be cute at some times. She does behave like a teenage girl with some cute antics during one of their dates, or leave a chocolate heart for John and boosting his morale up with the cute messages left in his locker. Lizzie gets a lot more interesting in Dusk and Dawn, however, where we see her point of view in the world. First is her internal monologue, capitalizing the letter H in him when describing John, as if John is some godlike being to be worshipped, although this can change near the end of the game. Another is how Lizzie perceives everyone around her. She will always be analysing for threats and weapons on people, sizing them up to see if she can defend John should they attack. Moreover, the sprites of the girls and Aaron once he comes out becomes a lot more seductive when Lizzie believes that they're after John and will literally start to see red when she wants to kill one of them. Although this redness will change to white when she's around John, as if he provides some sort of heavenly feeling to her and calms it down. Again, playing on the idea of John as some like godlike being to be worshipped upon. Moreover, she becomes more accepting to her situation, saying that had changed the day she has saved him from falling. Since then, she realized that she can use it to protect him. The day Lizzie references is when John almost fell to his death at the school. After the events of the first game, she becomes more comfortable knowing that she's not normal, that she's not like the other girls, and that John loves her for it. Lizzie is a interesting character. She's basically the opposite to John. She has those inhuman powers, and it has a very fragile state of mind that becomes deadly to her and everyone around her. But deep down, she can be normal. She's able to go to college and partake in the seminars, can enjoy the little things such as watching John play video games, and even help out other people who are not John. Well, as long as John is with her, but you get my point. She can be cute at times during her days and does have the natural desire of lust. She's normal, just in her own really bizarre yandere way. These two characters really helped me enjoy more complex characters. Pun Pun from Oyasumi Pun Pun, as I mentioned, Ken Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul, and Guts from Berserk. Oyasumi Pun Pun focuses on Pun Pun's journey through life, how he deals with his life and watching his state of mind change to the point where at certain ages his physical appearance changes in the manga. Tokyo Ghoul focuses on Ken Kaneki turning into a ghoul and having to abandon his human life and adapt to a carnivorous cannibal lifestyle of a ghoul, all while being considered a one-eye ghoul, a human ghoul hybrid who possesses a ghoul's ability. Berserk focuses on Guts, a mercenary literally born from a dead woman and having to adapt to the lifestyle of a mercenary, and then being betrayed by Griffith when he is part of the Band of the Falcon. Obviously, John and Lizzie are not on the same level as Pun Pun, Kaneki, and especially Guts, but the point I'm trying to make is that through John and Lizzie, I learned that not all good characters are some like OP person with plot armor and a multitude of power and skill to defeat the big bad enemy. They can be normal, or like at least relatively normal. They don't need to be some grandiose character, they just needed to be enjoyable in the case of Lizzie, and at times relatable in the case of John. This video, like my Persona video, was a passion project. Crimson Grey came out in 2017, its sequel came out in 2018. It's a visual novel that most people haven't heard about, but I fucking love it. Like how Persona made me enjoy more slice of life and JRPG games, Crimson Grey made me enjoy more nuanced storytelling, ones that don't spell out key details about characters and the story, but instead relies on the reader or viewer to look between the lines of what is given to them, to see the small details that the author added, which helps enhance the story when noticed, with characters that are not, again, OP with skills and abilities that are unnecessarily overtuned to make each battle a cakewalk for the MC, but instead characters that are more grounded, who can't fight off the main villain, but instead turn to just living off the grid, not drawing any attention and just trying to get on with their life. Sierra Lee made 2 amazing visual novels that I highly recommend you to go play. There's a bundle on Steam for both games, and as of writing this, it was at £8.78. I'll put the current price up as I'm editing this along with like the date, but either way, both visual novels are really fucking cheap. I'm also gonna leave Sierra Lee's Patreon down below. They said that they were planning to make a sequel revolving around John and Lizzie getting married, which sounds fucking amazing. But for now, we only have Crimson Grey and Crimson Grey Dusk and Dawn. It might not be popular at all, it might not be recognized by everyone else, and sadly it would definitely not get a manga or anime adaptation. But to me, it helped me get into manga and anime, and I'm okay with that. And before I go, I just want to say again, like, comment, sub if you enjoy this video, if you enjoy my content and you want to see more. Again, leave a recommendation down below, either, you know, anime, manga, visual novel. I don't mind, I'm down for anything, whatever. I'm a bit ill, by the way, if you can't tell. I think I sound better, hopefully, because this is my second recording. It was quite shit, the first one, I'll be honest. But yeah, I'm gonna stop yapping now. I need to start editing this, which is gonna be fun, because I don't know how to do half the stuff I want to do for the editing. But yeah, I'm gonna stop now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I've been Rage, and I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.